Stephen Bide right there reporting from Ginger Road to give you an update on the traffic situation right there if you haven't left your house. Right about now we are going into our next conversation of the day, remembering the NRA Liberation War. Yes, not only that, the Central Executive Committee, the National Executive Committee, all that into one fold. And then Saturday, finally, the NRM Delegates Conference. All that we shall be having that conversation right here as the country prepares to celebrate Liberation Day on the 26th of January. Much of the attention will be on the much anticipated National Resistance Movement Delegates Conference, which will convene both the party's top bra and foot soldiers. The conference comes at a time when the party Secretary General Kasula Lumumba had initially suggested that the NRM MPs who voted against the lifting of age limit would not be allowed to attend the Delegates Conference. This notion letter was nullified by the party's legal director, Oscar Kihika. For a breakdown of the expectations of the much anticipated convening, we are joined by the Ambassador Henry Mayiga, an NRM stalwart and Uganda's deputy head mission to Uganda. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much and good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, morning.
All right.
Yes, we are witnessing a simmering tension right there, which is not the first time between the Secretary General and that right there, Kasula Lumumba, and the Electoral Commission Chairman Tanga Odoi. And to one of the recommendations that were actually fronted when they met at the Central Executive Committee, the National Executive Committee on Saturday, would be to adopt a resolution that would separate the powers of the Secretary General and the NRM Electoral Commission. How are you going to go about that?
No, I think wherever there is a will, there is a way. And I want to believe that the National Resistance Movement as a party is really...
These problems have been around since 2016, so this time around, will they go away?
And definitely they will go away because the party has faced bigger problems than what is perceived to be a problem between the Secretary General and the Electoral Commission of the party. To me, that is a smaller problem than the problems that have existed before, like, I mean, dissenting voices within the party and so on and so forth, especially the rank and file. I believe that definitely a solution is going to be found in as far as the relationship between the two units are concerned, and I believe that by the end of the national conference that will be sorted. And recently, of course, I saw in the newspapers some kind of an understanding between the Secretary General and the Electoral Commission as a unit of the NRM party coming together and saying that they are now working together and all these kinds of things. So I don't want to believe that it's going to be a very big problem. It's going to be sorted by the various structures.
And of course, the NRM Delegates Conference will be convening on Saturday. But before that, today, the SEC and the NEC tomorrow, they'll be talking about some issues and resolutions that could be adopted on Saturday. What are some of the recommendations that you're looking at in the amendment of the NRM Constitution?
Of course, one of the big ones is going to be the lining up. I see it coming up because, of course, it's convenient in a sense. Of course, there have been arguments before, as you recall, especially by those who think that they know democracy much more than anybody else, that lining up is primitive, it is really riddled with a lot of uncertainties. For instance, if you're going to vote against your wife, or your wife is voting against you, then how is she or he going to see you go to a different line supporting some other candidate and all these kinds of things. But the fact of the matter is that we used this very system of elections recently during the LOC structure, and it had existed actually after the NRM took over power in 1986, and it worked very well. It's convenient in a sense because, yes, you know, democracy is very expensive, and if you must actually live up to it, then you must spend. But in the absence of money, you must look for options that are cheaper.
One of the arguments with regards to the lining up structure of, voting was the only benefit it has is the cut of costs. But in terms of it being pro or promoting democracy, it's totally against the facets of democracy. So on what lines, over and above the cost factor, did the party consider it, as an option for them to do the, internal kind of elections?
I just want to believe that the biggest reason must have been the cost cutting, because in the absence of money, yes, what do you do? But of course, there are other reasons that look, the earlier system that had been used of the secret ballot, of course, it was very expensive. But besides that, there were problems to do with the bribery and so on and so forth. So I don't want to believe that you're going to bribe me in order to join your line. It becomes a little difficult. Yes, you can do it. You can't rule it out completely. It's not cast in stone. But I want to believe that even the levels of corruption are going to go down, of bribery and all these kinds of things. And I don't want to believe that this system can't work.
All right.
It has worked before, and I believe we can perfect it in future when we get
Ambassador
more money.
Mayega, you did
Yeah.
mention that the reason we are resorting to the lining on a candidate's back is because of limited funding. But during the delegates conference, you're going to spend over 800 million Uganda shillings, and each delegate that will be attending will be receiving 200,000 Uganda shillings and 100,000 for accommodation. Where is this money coming from?
Of course, the party has got friends. It has, of course, got MPs. They contribute money. But the party itself has got friends. And
Who are
I
these
know-
friends?
Can
I
the
know- I know
the
it
same
for a
friends
fact.
actually help with the funding of a secret ballot kind of system, which is better?
Well, I mean, it's just a question of cost cutting again. Because if you must spend that 800 million Uganda shillings that you're talking about, and you must also spend on organizing the ballots and the ballot boxes and transporting them to wherever you are, or you're going to take them, of course, that doubles the expenditure. But you see, you cut it, you cut the cost by saying, okay, yes, people must come, of course, and that is the price of democracy, which we voted for in 2005, you remember, when we said we must go multi-party. So some of these expenses definitely must go on. But if we must really move forward as a country, not only as NRM as a party, but as a country, there are other things that must be done in order probably to bring down the cost of doing this business of democracy. Democracy is very expensive,
All
and we
right.
must accept.
So you're saying that NRM does have friends. Everyone that we have a conversation with, whenever we talk matters money and how they're financing their endeavors, they say that they have friends. So who are these friends of NRM?
Well, the friends, you can see, look at the invitation list. Those are part of the friends. I don't want to
I
really
saw
point a
Rwanda on
finger.
board.
Yes, of
Are
course.
you saying Rwanda is giving us some
Rwanda is
money?
a friend, although we have really had issues in the recent past, especially as far as the closure of the border and so on and so forth. But I want to believe that, yes, Rwanda is a friend.
So is
And
Rwanda
probably-
giving us money? Is Rwanda giving NRM money for this
I
particular
don't want to
conference?
specifically point at Rwanda, but I can assure you that the NRM has got friends, and those friends definitely can help, can assist, and all these kinds of things. And when they come in, yes, that kind of support is welcome. But of course, membership also contributes. I mean, members of parliament, for instance, and I don't want to suggest that what comes from members of parliament is adequate. If it was adequate, then we would have done what you suggested earlier at the beginning of
Right.
this conversation, that yes, we go for the full blast democracy, where we go into organizing ballots and ballot boxes and transporting them all over the country and so on and so forth. But in the absence of enough money, yes, we cut the cost and we say, okay, fine, let's line up. But the rest of the expenditures, like inviting the membership of the national conference,
Yes.
we must spend on those kinds of things.
Mr.
And the
Mayega,
friends are very instrumental.
Yes, yes. Ambassador, let me ask you this, because we always say that it's hard to give something for nothing. As much as you have friends who are giving, what are they getting in return? What's this deal about, this friendship thing? Because, you know, the president spearheaded the anti-corruption walk. And breaking it down with some of the experts right here on the show, they pointed out to some of these friends who help you with the campaign financing. And once you're elected in office, you have to give back. So are we saying that NRM has those kind of friends, or if it's not those kind of friends that you have to give back, then what's the agreement between NRM and these friends?
Well, you know, I just want to compare politics to what we do in church. I'm a church member, and I'm not going to say which church I go to, but I'm a church member. I'm a Christian, and you know how Christian organizations work. There is always that support, and I want to believe that, in a sense, it is similar to what does happen in as far as politics is concerned. That when you have a friend, yes, you scratch my back, I also scratch yours, and these friends are always there. They're always there. I remember, for instance, to give you an example, in the early 1980s, when, for instance, the Democratic Party, the DP in Uganda, he had support from the Christian Democrats from Germany, which actually was not only the Christian Democrats in Germany, but rather the Christian Democrats surrounded all over the world. And they supported the DP, they can't deny it. Yeah? And so through these kinds of collaboration between political parties and so on, whether they are ruling or they are not, and so on and so forth, that support usually comes, and I've seen it come before, and it's not happening for the first time. Once you have friends, then those friends can support you.
Indeed. So let's talk about the NRM constitution. You plan to amend it. And another issue could be the issue of independence, barring independence from running on the NRM ticket. They have to actually leave that post or leave the party 12 months before actually vying for that, 12 months before the election.
Yeah.
So what will be happening on Saturday? Will you actually adopt a resolution to bar independence, and actually won't that affect your majority in parliament? Because these NRM leaning MPs, actually, when it comes to voting on some issues, they're actually on the side of the NRM. What do you have to lose?
First of all, we have to understand how did the independence come about. It is because our democracy is still young. And once the democracy is still young, there are all sorts of things that come along as you try to become as democratic as possible. There are always those people who probably are going to feel they're dissatisfied with the system of elections that we had in the past.
Like
and therefore independence come up. So, and many of them, a majority of them actually in parliament, are actually members of the national resistance movement. And therefore, at the backs of the mind, of the minds of those who are in charge of the party, I think they must, and they've been voting together anyway, you must have seen that in parliament. The independents were NRM leaning, and members of parliament who are actually NRM flag bearers and so on and so forth, and they've been working together. So I want to believe that the structures of the party are going to work in such a way that there is that level of accommodation, because by saying that you rule it out completely, there will be a problem. But at the same time, I think we must agree that if we must have democracy in this country, we must also respect the processes through which people are elected to become flag bearers. And so there must be discipline. Indiscipline in politics has actually brought down governments. I don't want to give you many examples. Recently, there was a case in Australia, you remember, where people just disagreed, and eventually a government midway of the term, had to collapse and all these kinds of things. And so discipline must be part and parcel of the operations of political parties in this country.
So discipline is a major issue, but then there is also the other issue where the independent loses, but they loses at the primary level, but they feel like they can still win at the national level.
And they've won, I agree with you.
And so many of them have won
quite a
as
number of
independents.
Yes.
Yes. So why not support them in that regard? It's just they are still NRM
No, you see,
independents.
let's go back to what happened in 2005, because we went multi-party. You remember we had a referendum which said that we go multi-party. But of course, at that time, nobody envisaged the situation where independence would come up. But now that they've come, we must deal with the beast because it's in the forest.
Yes.
And there must be mechanisms. And you see, the fact of the matter is that we must have discipline in these political parties. If we are not going to have this discipline, then probably what happened in 2005 when we had that referendum was actually useless.
All right.
So there must be discipline, and we are agreed that we must be in our respective parties. And therefore, we must subscribe to these institutions because they are for the good of this country.
Right. Speaking of discipline and the agenda, critical agendas for this particular conference, you know, there's been this push and pull within the party for the top, you know, leaders in the NRM party saying that, oh, it's going to be an election, or we're going to vie for different seats. Just pointing in case right here, we have Jacob Olanya, of course, the, you know, Deputy Speaker of Parliament, saying that we actually saw this on social media. It was big over the weekend. Him saying that he's eyeing the national vice chairperson northern region kind of seat, so to speak. We also have Mr. Sam Kutesa, of course, the foreign affairs minister, saying that he's eyeing the vice chairperson NRM central region seat kind of thing. There's a lot of collision in between of people trying to, you know, fight for this particular seats and, you know, a vacancy, so to speak, within the party. Now, my question would be, are we going to have an election or not in this particular conference? Because there's hearsay. The NRM spokesperson, Mr. Rogers Mulindwa, saying that no, there's not going to be any election. So this, you know, kind of members who are trying to vie for different seats have been misinformed. So what exactly is going to happen? Election or not?
I think, first of all, we must agree the principle that once you accept democracy, then ambition is okay. Ambition is okay. If people are vying for these various positions of responsibility in the party, that's okay, because there must be always people who are ambitious and they want these positions and so on, and they want to serve. There is no doubt about that. And therefore, again, it is up to the party to decide as to whether there are going to be elections. But what I've heard, just like you've heard, is that there are no elections this time around. Probably there will be a national conference again towards probably the end of this year, to have those kinds, to fill up the positions and so on and so forth, because probably people have already served their terms. But I want to believe that there are not going to be elections. But it is an opportunity for those who want those positions, because this is a big group which you're not going to have in the short time from this weekend. Probably it's the next national conference is going to be probably towards the end of this year. So if somebody sees this opportunity of talking to those who are supposed to put him or to elect him into those positions of responsibility, I think for me I don't see any problem, because it's just a question of being ambitious and forward looking and forward planning and all these kinds of things. If you must occupy a position, So democracy, as far as I'm concerned, also supposes that there must be ambition. Yeah.
So, Mr. Maega, help us understand actually the infighting in the NRM party between the Secretary General and the NRM Electoral Commission Chairman Tanga Odoi. Now, Mr. Tanga Odoi says that it's his department that is concerned with the orchestration of local elections at the primary level. But then the Secretary General Kasula Lumumba is also coming out to say, no, it's my office that should be organizing elections. And I understand the SEC when it meets and the NEC when they meet, they'll be actually discussing these issues. How best can they separate the powers of the Secretary General and the Electoral Commission of the NRM? How are you going to go about that?
I think
and will we see an end to the tension on Saturday?
As I said right from the beginning of this conversation, is that democracy in this country is very young, because you cannot compare yourself with what has been happening in the US, for instance, where.
Before we talk about the US, can you please help us iron out
I'm going
right
to come
now?
because you see.
Okay, there's one issue you can iron out.
Yes.
Is the Secretary General mandated to organize elections or the NRM Electoral
Absolutely,
Commission?
because what are the regulations or what are the roles of the two units, the Secretary General and the Electoral Commission? What does the Electoral Commission do, and what does the office of the Secretary General? Because she's the chief administrator of the entire political party of the NRM. If she is, the question now that comes, because I've not really looked at the roles of the two offices, if she is the Electoral Commission under the Secretary, is the Electoral Commission under or supervised by the Secretariat of the NRM? That is the fundamental question. And once we have answered that one, and I'm afraid I've not looked at these two offices critically, and I didn't know that we were going to talk about it in that detail. But the fact of the matter is, if the Secretariat is the one that supervises the Electoral Commission, then the Electoral Commission has to be under the Secretary General. If not, then the Electoral Commission is supposed to be an autonomous unit, and therefore that supposes that, for instance, the Electoral Commission is supposed to be to have a free hand in organizing elections. But the fundamental question or real supposition here is as to whether the Secretariat supervises the Electoral Commission. And once we've answered that, and I'm afraid I don't have facts at the moment, but I think we need to check out those.
All right.
Once that,
and I did check them out. I did check out the facts. According to the Electoral Commission chairman of the NRM, he says that the duty of the Secretariat, the NRM Secretariat, the Secretary General, is to just register people. And the issue of the elections is to be done by the Electoral Commission. Kasula Lumumba should just be registering people, political mobilization in the NRM.
No. I think I want to be convinced.
That's what is causing the infighting now.
By looking, because you see, and that's what I was coming to, because I wanted to compare ourselves to what has been happening in the US for the last 250 years.
Yes.
Our democracy only started in 2005. We cannot expect that these things can be ironed out in such a short time, and therefore create a good working environment between units.
Yes.
And therefore, I want to suppose that probably there is a vacuum in as far as how these two are supposed to interact.
All right.
And once that vacuum is closed, by putting in place clear-cut roles for each one of the units, and if the NRM as a party really feels that the Electoral Commission must be supervised by the Secretary, it should be spelled out very clearly, so that we iron out this problem once and for all. It doesn't have to come and bother us.
You know, the conversation about the electoral reforms is still ongoing. A lot of disgruntlement, so to speak, from different facets, them asking, why is it taking so long? Now, in 2015, amendments were made during the National NRM conference. And during this conference, these particular amendments stipulated that the positions of Secretary General, National Treasurer, and the EC Chairperson would be appointed by the National Chairman, who is the President. One of the facets in the electoral reforms, one of the propositions is for this power to be removed from the President, especially that EC Chairperson appointment. It shouldn't be, the onus should not be on the President to appoint, because the conversation or the bone of contention is, if the President appoints, then what will be the grounds of saying that a country will ever have free and fair elections? Do you think this will be a conversation that will be brought back during the national conference come the 25th?
Well, whether it comes back or it doesn't, it's also a reflection of what happens at the national level.
Especially now that we have quite a number of rebel MPs who are
Absolutely.
not happy with how things are going.
Well,
The president said that he doesn't want to see them at the
happiness-
conference.
Happiness always is a matter of conjecture, because I mean, one thing is going to upset you, another one is going to make you happy. For me, I wouldn't really vouch so much about that argument. But I wanted to give an example of what happens at the national level, because there has been that argument that the president leads the executive, there is the legislature, there is also the judiciary, but why does the president continue to appoint the judges? So it is the same argument, who appoints. But at the end of it all, I think what is important is to create harmony between these many working groups. That argument that the president can't appoint these people, if he doesn't, it will be the SEC to appoint them, maybe, or the National Executive Committee endorsing them, or the National Conference endorsing them. But at the end of the day, which has all those levels of administration in the party, it is again the chairman.
So what you're
or the
saying is that
president.
this
So-
is a conversation that maybe would not, you guys will not have come the 25th. Is it a
No,
conversation?
for me, I really wouldn't mind so much about that one as to who appoints, because you see, the chairman must have the teeth to bite. Yeah, he must have the teeth to bite, and that creates a level of order.
But if the Rebel MPs bring this conversation back, do you think the party will actually give it a hearing?
Which is okay, because we're in a democracy.
All
They can
right.
bring it up, and when they get defeated, they should accept that we have been defeated.
Okay.
If they win, the other side which has lost should also accept, and that is democratic practice. Once we agree to become democratic in this country, and also in the respective political parties that we have in this country. Extremely
Mr.
important.
Mayaga, the other amendment the NRM is looking forward to is the involvement of the NRM structures in the implementation of the NRM manifesto. Are we looking at a change of direction?
Well, I've seen that one of the things which are going to be discussed in these various segments of administrative units of the party is really auditing the manifesto, which is very important, because what have we achieved? What lessons have we learned? Have we delivered? Because we promised that probably we would do 1 or 2, 3, 5 things, and so on and so forth. Out of those 5, how many of them have we achieved? Extremely important to audit the performance of the manifesto. Now, of course, the Prime Minister's office has been over time giving out information to the wider public about how the NRM manifesto has actually been performing. And the last check that I did, they had performed up to something like 67%. And that was, I think, somewhere in August last year, which was, in my view, very good performance. But of course, there are always those intervening things that interfere with the manifesto operationalization and so on and so forth, and that becomes a problem. So the auditing of the manifesto, in my view, is extremely important, so that we can also forecast and also plan for the subsequent manifesto that the NRM is going to sell to the public,
All right.
to the voters.
Yeah, you know, the other conversation has been the choice of date. 25th, the NRM National Conference or Delegates Conference, 26th, Liberation Day. What's the symbolism right there, and what was the rationale of choosing that critical date? Are we saying that Liberation Day has now been turned into an NRM thing? What exactly is there? Because at times, you know, some of these things speak louder than words.
You see, in politics, there's what they call opportunity. Of course, the Liberation Day is going to be, is going to epitomize everything that the NRM has been doing over these years, and probably in as far as even the manifesto, this very current manifesto is concerned. And therefore, this opportunity, in the wisdom of the NRM, I just want to believe, the NRM administrators, the NRM leadership, is rare, that you are organizing all these things from the SEC to the NEC to the National Conference and then to the Liberation Day, which will be a culmination of all these things. And therefore, all this infrastructure that you have as a party is going to be fed into the Liberation Day. Because
So are
you're
you
not going
saying
to,
the
you're not
Liberation
going
Day
to
is
have,
now an NRM event? Is that
remember,
what
we are
you're
crying
saying?
of lack of money, and therefore you're not going to invite these people back to attend all these things. So an opportunity has arisen that the SEC should be held, the NEC should be held, National Conference should be held, and then there's that culmination into the Liberation Day. For me, it's an opportunity.
Doesn't that pass some, you know, kind of indicator to tell us that maybe Liberation Day is an NRM thing and not a national thing?
I don't think we must accept in principle that yes,
Are we going to see that day painted in yellow as it's going to be
the people of
painted
this
on the
country,
25th?
the people of this country elected the National Resistance Movement. They elected President Yoweri Museveni to run this country for these subsequent 5 years up to 2021. And therefore, we must accept in the principle that yes, it is that party which is in charge of the country, And so if they have planned it in such a way that Liberation Day is a culmination of all these things which are happening. But of course, I'm sure the rest of the political parties are going to be invited to this Liberation Day, because in principle, all of us agree that yes, this country, I think, needed that liberation. And therefore, we belong to it, and it belongs to us.
And of course,
irrespective of whether we
Mr. Maega, as we get close to the Liberation Day on Sunday, yes, there's a conversation that is simmering in the corners. The involvement of the youth right there, because they believe young people are not appreciative of what the NRM did for this country when they ushered in security. The only people who appreciate the security that we get to enjoy right now are those in their 40s and above, people who actually were around when we were actually going through those tumultuous times. They actually, you don't even have to ask them what they think of the NRM Liberation Day, because yes, they were there, people were killed, so they understand, but the young people don't. We were 12 million in 1986. Now we are around 42 million. That means 80% of the generation is made up of young people. These people do not know their history. What is the NRM doing to actually acquaint these young people with their history so that we do not go back to those days?
Absolutely. I agree 100%, because I've inhabited this country for the last 55 years. I'm now 55 years old. And I've not seen an administration, a government, that has given opportunity to the younger people in this country like this one. And I'm not saying this one.
A government that is curtailing social media.
I don't want to curtail social media. I don't believe in social media so much. That's why I'm not even
planning to impose taxes on the
I don't even participate on Facebook and so on, because the kind of filth many times that are spewed into social media, I can't stand myself. And therefore I avoid as much as possible. So,
Mr. Maega, social media, if you're going to gossip,
for
instance,
will not,
Mr. Maega, if you're going to gossip on social media, it will not give you any help.
Discipline
but if you're going,
media,
if you're going to use it to actually do some kind of historical,
disciplined social media, I have absolutely no problem. If, for instance, we must communicate about development issues and all these kinds of things, that's okay.
E-commerce,
but where somebody is going to laugh at another, like, for instance, Mr. Chibule, when he lost 2 children, you remember? You must have read what was on the social media. That's why I don't believe in that kind of
Even
filth.
when Abiriga died, yes, there were some comments.
I don't believe in that kind of
issue
filth.
is,
irrespective of whether somebody belongs to opposition, which I don't subscribe to. I am not going to run those people down when they run into calamity or something like that. That's why my participation in social media is very limited, because of the kind of filth that is there. But I wanted to explain.
But why?
I wanted to explain.
Ambassador, let me just cut you short. Why do you think we have this filth on social media, as you call it, filth? Don't you think it's because
it's a worldwide phenomenon?
No. Especially in Uganda, the president actually introduced a tax because of Lugambo, trying to curb Lugambo. Now, my question to you is, I remember during that time, and still right now, especially, I remember 2 days ago, we were having a conversation about the internet space. People are saying the reason as to why they're ranting on social media is because they've not been given an avenue to give out their views.
Those who argue like that, Sylvia, those who argue like that, because you have limited time, give me time to answer, because they are limited in terms of exposure, because where I live, it is the same story.
There's no freedom of expression,
social media
so to speak.
is a problem. Social media has caused children to die in the UK, for instance. It has caused death in the US. It's a worldwide problem. So those who think that this is a Ugandan problem, it's because of lack of exposure, they should understand that this is a worldwide. Unless we really bring discipline to social media, there's going to be a problem.
I agree with you, Mr. Maega.
Beyond the borders of Uganda.
I agree with you when you say
that's why my
internet,
participation.
I agree
but
with
you asked me a very good question, which I have not answered up to now, because you said, what has this government done for the youth?
Nice.
And I was trying to answer that. Then we, of course, went into social media and so on and so forth. But I have not seen a government that has given opportunity. For instance, look at how many people can be categorized in the parliament as youth. When this government came, it put programs in place that supported advancement of the youth. No doubt about it. The youth councils and all these kinds of things. And now, right from the LOC, the lowest unit in terms of administration in this country, up to parliament, the youth are participating in all those things. And that's why, part of the reason why there's, of course, a lot of ranting in the cities, in the towns, and so on and so forth in this country. But whenever we come to elections, a majority of the people, including the youth, will vote for President Yoweri Museveni. And have voted for President Yoweri Museveni.
The uneducated have been able to get into the fold, thanks to the NRM, yes. The uneducated who are in classes have been able to get acquainted with history, thanks to the political science, history lessons. But what about those who are not educated? in society who do not have access to school, universities, the parliament, but they are
Well,
there.
again, the education you're talking
How
about.
are you targeting them to actually acquaint them with the history of the
Because
country?
the best
reason,
way-
Mr. Maega, the
Yeah.
reason I want the young people to be actually involved in this process so that they are acquainted with the history, so that they know where we came from, the fighting, the bloodshed, so that they do not orchestrate the same
agree.
right now.
I
Yes.
agree, 100%, sir. And what has happened is that this very government, you remember, put in place the UPE, it put in place the USE, it put in place even now the government scholarships at university level and all these kinds of things. All these programs are to support
Yes.
not the 70-year-olds, but the youth in this country. And that's why massification of education in this country has actually grown by leaps and bounds. It
Yes.
has grown by leaps and bounds in this country, and that is for purposes of supporting the youth in this country. Extremely important. Yeah?
Ambassador Maega, I would like to link to my reporter who is at Kololo right now. Yes. Mr. Mbide, what's the latest at Kololo?
Yes, indeed, I'm here at the Kololo airstrip where at least the apprehension for those heading towards Namboli this Saturday is going to take place. The people you see in the background here are those who are trying to access the other registration center where they're going to be getting their accreditation forms from, and many of these are either NRM staff and others are just coming as delegates. But of course, as you drive from the Wampeo Avenue connecting towards this Kololo strip, you'll be finding heavy security presence by the SFC. I'll be speaking to the media and communications officer for NRM, Mr. Rogers Mulindwa. Good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you? And to our viewers, good morning, everybody.
Okay, just take us through what's going to happen here as per the program towards Saturday.
Yeah, we are starting off, we are kick-starting the exercise. Today what is happening, we are going to have accreditation of the NEC members, those who will be in the National Executive Council meeting that will sit in State House Entebbe tomorrow. Those are basically the MPs, the flag bearers for parliamentary level, the district chairpersons, the LC5 chairpersons who are NRM or the flag bearers, the NRM district chairpersons. They are members like the promoters of NRM and the others. There are so many, about 850 people. So after the accreditation here...
And who will be these ones, the 800? Who will be?
Those are the ones I've mentioned, those categories. Because they have to go for NEC tomorrow. But as we talk now, SEC is going to start in Entebbe at 10. Of course, SEC has about
the Central
26
Executive
people.
Committee.
Yeah, the Central Executive Committee. The other one is a council. This one is a committee. It is going to sit today. So on the lines, we have some of them are our staff who are supposed to be here to welcome these guests or to help in the accreditation process. We have already put up the tents, and every district will have a tent where they will be attended to. But for these NEC members, there is a big tent where they are going to attend to them from. So that tomorrow, when they go to NEC, then we shall be receiving a bigger group of about 12,000 people, those who will be coming from all over the country. You know, we have, I think, the biggest conference in the world. We could be having. The second one could be 8,000, but we have, I think, the biggest. So they will be coming in tomorrow, starting at the same time. By 7, we shall have started tomorrow to do the accreditation of those other members. Those members here, we have avoided having entertainment because we just want it to be a walkthrough. We don't want people to congest Kololo. We want, if you are served, then you leave. Then you go where you are going to sleep, where you will spend the night, so that you prepare for the national conference on Saturday. And of course in Nambole it's going to be a very, very big function. It will be quite a very big function, and we have invited quite a number of people. We have even invited opposition leaders to come.
Who from the opposition has confirmed attendance?
Well, I may not be very certain who has confirmed, but the 4 that are under iPod, we have invited them. The President General of DP, Honorable Mao, and Dr. Selanda, the Secretary General, UPC, Honorable Akena, and the Secretary General, JEMA, Honorable Basalirwa, and the Secretary General, and the FDC, Honorable Engineer Power, and the Secretary General, Honorable Nandala Mafwad.
So
We
these
have invited
opposition
them.
leaders are free to come with their party colors, party...
We don't mind. We don't mind because whether they are here, they remain FDC. Because we must graduate to a certain level in politics, and the thinking must also change. For me to go and attend an FDC event does not make me FDC, okay? The Secretary General, Right Honorable Justin Kasura Lumumba, was once invited by General Mugisha Muntu when he was still chairing FDC. They had an event, and she went and attended in our yellow colors, so it doesn't matter. But what we need is the spirit of iPod, that we are working together and we are moving to the same direction.
Okay, someone will say that for you as NRM, you are free to go and converge at Nambole, but you would see that maybe for people power, those who are trying to do consultations, the other day we saw FDC members not being allowed to cross to the east. So maybe would you call this democracy?
Actually, we have fulfilled all the requirements by the security agencies. We notified the police, we wrote to them, and we don't expect the police to come and disorganize us because we did everything. You know what our brothers do in opposition? They do it intentionally. They don't go to police simply because they know they get more mileage and the journalists will give them more coverage when they are denied access, when they are not. So they do it as a strategy to market themselves. But for us, we have informed the police, and we hope both Kololo and Nambole are going to be very secure.
Okay, maybe one would say that those MPs or other party members who are taken to be rebel, those who put on red berets, just want to know, are they free to come putting on their red beret?
Yeah.
For example, Honorable Mbwate Kamwa.
No. If we see somebody with the red beret here, we have not invited them. You know, that's just a pressure group. We've not invited them. We are dealing with the political parties.
But they are your party members.
No. Whether you are our party member, don't carry the red beret here. You will be arrested. That's obvious. We can't spare you for that. So this is an NRM event. For the other party leaders we have invited, they are free to use their colors. We can't stop them. But if you're a party member and then you come with the red beret, or that would look queer. And I don't think a member of parliament at that level can really do that. That would be childish. Okay.
Thank you so much,
but
Mr.
But of course, I would add and say, the list has been submitted now of those so-called rebel MPs. The chief whip submitted to us as a party, and the Secretary General has submitted to the disciplinary committee of Al-Haj Chigong.
What is likely to happen to them?
However, the disciplinary committee may not convene before the national conference. We are not certain because the chairperson of the party, His Excellency, is expected tomorrow to fill the gaps in the disciplinary committee. There are some gaps. There are people who left, there are people who have died.
So there is still likelihood that maybe they will be not allowed.
They are likely to attend. We are taking a decision shortly, but the action against them may be taken later. But for the independent MPs who voted in our favor during the constitutional amendment, they have the invitation. Okay,
maybe someone will say that there is still some confrontation and maybe some misunderstanding between your party Secretary General and your Electoral Commission's
No, those are old stories. Those are old stories. We have moved a step ahead. We are at another level. 2020
is now
different year. So much harmony, yes. Okay. And you will see it from here. And of course, you have seen for the first time, we have held joint press conferences between Dr. Tanga and the Right Honorable Esigi, which had not happened before.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Rogers Mulindo is the Media and Communications Officer for NRM. What is happening here at the Kolo Airstrip is the accreditation. These are some of the party members and some staff of NRM. This is Morning at NTV. Stephen Imbido, Fefesu Chibuga, Bade Kololonga. We'll be keeping tabs on NRM and what's happening in Kololo. Back to Romeo in the studios. I'm out for now.
Very much, Stephen Bide. We've run out of time, Mr. Mayiga. We wanted to engage you on what was being said there, but in a nutshell, you can tell us, are you sure these 30 MPs will be attending? What are your last words as we get closer to the delegates conference on Saturday? Because I'm sure the second and neck, nothing is going to be happening today and tomorrow. The main event is on Saturday and Sunday. Let us in.
Well, I don't want even to call them rebel MPs. Well, they voted according to their conscience. But I just want to believe they're going to attend. Yeah, that's my belief.
There's nothing to lose.
There is nothing to lose. I mean, these are, like you have children in your family and some of them decide to behave otherwise. at the end of the day, you must bring them together. Yeah,
Or are you trying to orchestrate that the party is united?
it is. That's why it wins elections.
Okay, final remarks.
Well, I just want to thank, of course, NTV for this opportunity, and how I wish that we could have more discussion.
And what should our people
these kind of
expect come
things.
24th,
But
25th?
25th, towards the end of this week, is that we're going to have a united national resistance movement party, which is in charge of the country, and I believe that that kind of unity is good for the country.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ambassador Henry Maega and NRM Stalwart, thank you for having made the time to speak to us. It's been
you so
amazing.
much.
Many
Thank you,
thanks.
Stephen.
Right about now, we're going to take a very short breather and return with another Take Note conversation. Keep it here.